Meghan Markle's latest podcast launch has been charmingly described as stomach-turning after she received scathing criticism over her narcissistic Netflix series.
What happens when Hollywood royalty turns on a duchess? When a superstar with nothing to lose puts everything on the line and says what everyone's been thinking? Meghan Markle just walked into her biggest PR nightmare yet. And this time, it wasn't a British tabloid or bitter royal watcher leading the charge. It was Tom Cruise, live on late-night television, who blew the lid off what insiders have been whispering for months.
Reviews for Confessions of a Female Founder are in, and if Meghan Googles herself as much as we know she does, she will not be happy with them.
Meghan's podcast comeback wasn't just cringeworthy, it was catastrophic. What was meant to be her grand return to relevance has now gone up in flames, with critics, fans, and former allies all joining the roast. From savage reviews to radio silence from once loyal A-listers, Meghan's media empire is cracking from the inside, and it all started with a single joke. But as we're about to show you, that joke triggered a domino effect no one saw coming. Because this wasn't just bad press. This was a turning point, a public painful reminder that no matter how many millions you invest, if the audience smells inauthenticity, they will walk. And this time, they didn't just walk. They laughed as they left.
He's just out there just constant, like he's just going to do whatever he can to make sure that our family is safe. And
critically and socially, Markle's podcast has been met with a less than stellar reception.
It was supposed to be just another lighthearted interview. Tom Cruise, Hollywood's most polished action star, dropping by The Late Show to charm the audience and sell a movie. But when Stephen Colbert casually asked him about any new podcasts he'd been listening to lately, Cruise didn't blink. He smirked, leaned forward with that signature gleam in his eye, and delivered a line that detonated across the internet within hours. "I tried listening to Confessions of a Female Founder, but I had to pull the eject lever faster than I did in Top Gun." The audience erupted. Colbert stifled a grin, unsure whether to steer the moment back to safer territory or let Cruise riff. And riff he did. The actor mimed yanking a parachute cord, and MOCKS screamed like he was bailing out of a crashing jet, all while pretending to fumble through a cringeworthy episode. But this wasn't just about laughs. It was a seismic cultural cue.
Did manage to chart in the top 10 in the US and Canada, I should stress, below everywhere else. It's a far cry from her Joe Rogan domination. And I just want to state for the record that I predicted.
For someone like Cruise, rarely political, rarely petty, to go there meant the gloves were off. The laughter in the studio wasn't just about a bad podcast. It was relief. It was vindication. Because behind that single punchline was years of pent-up fatigue, tired of the curated tears, tired of the calculated vulnerability, tired of Meghan Markle's one-woman PR machine dressed up as empowerment. And when a superstar like Cruise puts you on blast, the fallout isn't just online. It starts to shake the very foundation of your brand.
It's that Wilford didn't love school and that she wishes she hadn't worked so hard. Critic Rachel RSD from The Guardian criticized the show as sycophantic and stomach-turning, saying it's hardly a manual of specific constructive business advice.
If Meghan hoped Cruise's comment would fade into the noise of late-night banter, she severely underestimated the cultural appetite for catharsis. Because the moment that parachute joke landed, the gloves came off, and the reviews that followed weren't just harsh. They were devastating. The Guardian described the podcast as stomach-turning, dripping with self-importance. The Telegraph claimed it felt like watching a Duchess cosplay as a startup coach. And the Times didn't hold back, calling it a cringe fest in couture. But what really rattled Meghan's camp wasn't the British press, it was the unexpected betrayal from American outlets she thought were on her side.
Meghan Markle has finally revealed why she and Prince Harry call each other M and H. What could it be? A mystery for the eighth letter of the alphabet, and H is the eighth letter of the alphabet. 8 plus 13 is 20.
Bustle, The Cut, even NPR all began to chip away at the narrative. NPR's culture critic went as far as to label it emotionally manipulative and narratively hollow. And one blogger from a prominent feminist platform hit the viral jackpot with a brutal line: "If Meghan is a female founder, I'm a female astronaut." The numbers only confirmed what the headlines hinted at. Despite its flashy rollout and Meghan's massive media pull, the podcast failed to chart in the top 100 on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon, not just in the US, but globally. Even Canada and the UK, where she once had solid name recognition, gave it the cold shoulder.
Cannot stop talking about everyone's favorite troubled royal twosome, Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. But also Meghan and Harry, who have dragged Britain into what some are calling Megxit, but that I call herabdication.
Meghan didn't just launch a weak product, she revealed a much deeper disconnect. That her message, wrapped in buzzwords and designer branding, no longer had emotional weight with the people it was meant to inspire. And when the people stop caring, the critics start feasting. Here's where it got really messy. Tom Cruise's roast didn't just humiliate Meghan publicly, it gave Hollywood permission to stop pretending. And within days, the whispers became statements. A senior studio executive anonymously told Variety she wants to be Oprah without doing the work. That quote spread like wildfire. Another insider put it more bluntly to Business Insider. She keeps selling her struggle, but no one's buying anymore. Meghan's Netflix deal, once touted as the crown jewel of her post-royal empire, suddenly looked fragile. Internal leaks revealed growing resentment among producers and creative teams, frustrated with her insistence on full editorial control and unwillingness to take real notes.
Now, we all have our theories, of course. Here's mine. I assumed it was for the obvious reason. M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. 8 plus 13 is...
According to staffers, she surrounded herself with yes people, dismissed feedback, and operated in a self-imposed creative bubble. The result? Content that felt sanitized, stiff, and worst of all, irrelevant. Netflix, known for chasing data and audience response, took notice. Meghan's projects weren't delivering viewership, headlines, or buzz. Behind closed doors, internal discussions began about strategic redirection, with other female-led entrepreneurial series, like Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine, being moved to the front of the line.
See how selfish the love is, and that they need a note so they can, get the tears or whatever. Like, it feels so Oprah. It's a little bit ridiculous.
Meghan wasn't just losing her creative control, she was losing the platform altogether. In a town built on momentum, hers was stalling. And as Hollywood knows too well, stalled brands don't just fade, they get replaced. It wasn't long ago that Meghan Markle could call on a Rolodex of icons: Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, Tyler Perry, even Beyoncé's inner circle. These weren't just names, they were her media shield, a curated firewall of respectability and influence. But when things started to crumble, those names got suspiciously quiet. Oprah, who handed Meghan and Harry the biggest interview of their lives in 2021, hasn't uttered a public word since the podcast flopped. Sources inside Harpo say the door isn't just closed, it's bolted shut. Tyler Perry, once praised for giving them shelter and security during their post-royal exile, has stayed completely silent. No retweets, no stories, no statements. Even Ellen, who once gushed over Meghan's fresh voice, quietly unfollowed her on social media, a digital breakup that fans noticed immediately. And Beyoncé's team, according to Variety, they flat out declined a collaboration with Meghan's production company.
Look at her friendships, especially I want to say her friendship with Jessica Mulroney. Like, Mulroney's children, all three of them were in Meghan's wedding. Her sons held Meghan's veil, and now she no longer talks to her over a stupid social media, which one it was. And as far as we're aware, they don't speak, they don't see each other. And
one source put it bluntly, they don't want the drama. Meghan's brand is considered high risk. That phrase, high risk, might be the most damning indictment of all, because in Hollywood, high risk doesn't mean dangerous. It means unbankable. And the second you become unbankable, the red carpets vanish, the meetings dry up, and the only thing louder than the criticism is the silence. This one stung. Meghan had carefully positioned herself as a voice for modern feminism. She cited Gloria Steinem, aligned herself with Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and spent years attaching herself to every empowerment platform that would have her. But when her podcast launched and floundered, those same voices didn't just go quiet. They turned. Steinem gave an interview saying, "Feminism isn't a performance. It's not about broadcasting your struggle." She didn't name Meghan, but the subtext screamed louder than any headline. Adichie, once Meghan's literary North Star, was asked whether celebrities help or hurt the feminist movement. Her response? Some confuse attention with impact. Subtle, cutting, and unmistakably targeted. The feminist media world began to fracture. Writers who once praised Meghan's bravery now openly questioned her sincerity. Was this really about elevating voices, or just maintaining brand relevance? Even fans began to voice fatigue. They weren't connecting with the content because it didn't feel like advocacy. It felt like therapy with a spotlight, cloaked in empowerment slogans but centered entirely around Meghan's emotional narrative. The podcast felt hollow, and when progressive audiences feel manipulated, they don't just disengage, they turn on you. Insiders from Meghan's production team are painting a bleak picture, not of chaos, but of control. Meghan reportedly insisted on final approval for every episode, from topic selection to post-production tweaks. That micromanagement didn't just slow things down, it suffocated the process. Several producers told the Wall Street Journal that the project felt produced in a vacuum, with zero interest in diverse input. One former editor described it as echo chamber therapy wrapped in designer buzzwords. Another claimed that episodes were often rewritten to fit Meghan's preferred narrative, even if it meant deleting more compelling content. And then came the staffing shifts: burnout, frustration, turnover. Meghan allegedly clashed with several senior creatives, some of whom walked away from the project entirely. Longtime friend Jessica Mulroney, once so close that her children walked in Meghan's royal wedding, has reportedly been iced out of her inner circle over a petty Instagram incident. These small breakups are telling. They hint at a larger pattern: a woman who demands total control, even at the cost of collaboration, longevity, and trust. When the team behind the curtain starts fleeing the stage, the whole production falls apart. Spotify already bailed in 2023, citing poor performance and missed production goals. Now, Netflix, the Sussex's last major media partner, is reportedly on edge. The streaming platform is notorious for quietly killing projects without fanfare, and according to insiders, Meghan's series is skating dangerously close to that fate. Executives are reevaluating all active contracts under Archwell Productions after Confessions of a Female Founder failed to generate momentum. What's more telling is how Netflix has begun spotlighting other female entrepreneur stories, like Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine, while Meghan's content gets buried in the catalog. Behind closed doors, the complaints are piling up: creative rigidity, lack of compelling narratives, and a refusal to accept critical feedback. One internal source said, "She's running her content like a palace, not a studio." And that's the kiss of death in entertainment, where collaboration is currency and adaptability is survival. With investor pressure mounting and competition heating up, Netflix may not wait around for another flop. And if they cut ties, Meghan's media dreams don't just stall, they collapse completely. Meghan Markle entered the media world with ambition, leverage, and a head start most creators could only dream of. But now, that runway has ended, and the crash landing is playing out in real time. One sarcastic joke from Tom Cruise became the matchstick, but the fuel had been piling up for years. Inflated branding, emotionally safe content, creative rigidity, and a total misread of the cultural moment. Meghan's podcast didn't fail because of misogyny or trolls. It failed because it didn't connect. And in a space where authenticity is king, performative empowerment just doesn't cut it. The critics have turned, the allies have vanished, the platforms are moving on, and the audience, they've stopped listening. Meghan Markle, once poised to redefine what a modern duchess could be, is now facing an uncomfortable question. Not about reinvention, but about relevance. When the biggest names won't defend you and the biggest platforms stop calling, what's left? A curated Instagram grid? A silent inbox? A podcast graveyard? Hollywood has seen its share of redemption arcs, but they only work when the star is willing to evolve. Right now, Meghan doesn't look like she's evolving. She looks like she's stuck. And in this town, being stuck is just one step away from being forgotten. Drop a comment if you think Meghan's comeback can still happen, or if we're witnessing the quiet end of an era.